Welcome back, everybody. My name is Grace, or Gibby, whatever you prefer, and today I want to talk about the Mason Ultra Rare Golden Gift Box armor. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Mason armor comes in all 8 elements, and it can be found in the Ultra Rare gift boxes, one each for all 8 elements. Now, each armor has a main resistance and a secondary resistance. The main resistance is whatever it says it is, and the secondary resistance is to darkness. Now, what they do is they have an ability called Terror, and you call upon the energy of X location, blah blah blah, and it chokes your enemies. Ignore the fact that this is an ice armor with an energy imbue. They just messed up the elements on release, so the imbues and the elements of some are a little bit mixed up, but ignore that. Then you attack the foe or deal damage to the foe, and they're choked. If you do a normal amount of damage, you'll get about this much, a 25% choke. However, what I'm going to be talking about is how easy it is to stack up a pretty ridiculous choke, even on monsters like bosses. A lot of people claim that the setups to get these chokes are inefficient or impractical. That's just not true. They are really good setups and really easy to do. And you can do them even on bosses with low damage caps, situationally. The multi-hit effects that you imbue. So, I'm going to make this video to prove that Mason's Form 1 is expensive, but not at all impossible in a boss fight scenario. And 2, can be used really, really well to deal with bosses and to choke bosses. First up is going to be War-Torn Dragon, then I'm going to be doing it on Afterlife X, then finally I'm going to be doing a maximum boosted showcase against our friend, the Combat Practice Trainer. I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I'll see you all later. Alright, first up is Afterlife X. Now, the big thing about this guy is he has a plus 30 boss boost, which makes people think that a lot of effects can't really be used against him for the purposes of status locking or status effects. Now, fortunately, that isn't true in the case of choke. What I'm doing is just a little boosting setup. I'm using Intellect to cast Moonwalker's Grace, and I'll lose a little bit of HP as I leave that setup. But what I'm going to do is I started on pretty much full resources here, and I'm simply going to try and choke Afterlife X from this point on. Now, what I'm going to do is use H-Series armor with its ranged rockets nuke. I'm also going to use a couple of simple boosters, like Essence of Carnage, this Bloodblade-esque weapon which deals plus 30% damage, and Anger Linorum. Now I'm also going to use a damage booster because remember, the Mason Choke is based off damage dealt. So if you deal high damage, you'll have great results, and if you deal low damage, you'll have terrible results. So I'm going to use all this stuff. I'm going to turn on the celerity so I get to act again after this, and I'm going to use the Missile Barrage. Okay, so he resisted it once, which is totally possible. That can happen, but luckily, because we've got H-Series, we can just once again imbue, switch back to H-Series, and the crazy part about this is that we did that all on one SP bar. You didn't see me click Essence Orb even once, and that's because you don't have to. It's not that inefficient to do this strategy. The imbued attack leaves your foe choking, and now he's choked for 3 turns to deal 10% damage. So what I'm going to do, the big danger of Afterlife X is when you do a lot of damage to him, he finishes you off with a massive nuke after his comes back to life. But you're going to see what happens. He's choked to deal 10% damage, so I don't even have to worry about it. So I'm going to just, let's see, his energy resistance is 0, so I'm going to have to damage him another way. And I don't have another ranged weapon because I didn't plan ahead. Hold on. Okay, problem solved. We're just going to use the Arctic's Ally Assist because I don't want to miss with another weapon. So I could have killed him with a basic attack. He had 300 HP. What you're going to see is even though I killed him in 2 turns, which means his nuke is crazy charged up, he's already dead. or he only dealt, what, like 1,000 damage? And that's without a dark resistance misc. So this choke trivializes this boss, even though he has a really high boss boost, and even though I had to choke him twice to inflict it once. So first of all, you can use a little more potence, you can use Spotter Drake, Pride Lord, etc. Second of all, even if you fail the first infliction, you still have another infliction on deck to choke him. And this works for any boss with this H-series setup for both warriors and rangers, the basic attack or the rocket skill. That's why this is really good, and it's great against bosses, even if they have a boss boost resistance, because we have this, sorry, wrong shield, because we have this 20 potence shield in the Eternal Champion's shield, and you can use a potence misc, or if you have the Pale Skull misc, that gives 20 potence and plus 20% damage, so it's perfect. There's a lot of ways to inflict choke against bosses, and it's really easy to get a fat choke with Mason form. Okay, moving on, we're going to face a boss not with a super high boss boost, but with a super low damage cap, and you're going to see just how easy it is to choke that boss too. Okay, so I'm going to show you how this setup for burn stacking even works against somebody like Wartorn, who has super low resistances and a low damage cap. Now again, part of the reason that this works is because the Mason choke is divided by resistance. So if your monster has really low resistance or really high resistance, it doesn't matter, it still takes the same amount of damage. Or it still takes the same amount of choke regardless of whether the damage you deal is really high or really low. So I'm using just a quick little setup to get my accuracy going. I've got basic boosting, pet, and guest, totally free to play, of course. Aside from the Mason. Anyways, but as you can see, nothing too crazy here. Just Spearmaster emblem, weapon, a Bloodblade type weapon. This one does plus 30% damage, and Basket Breath, boosting misc. And we've set him to 3 rounds of 20% damage. So for 3 rounds, this monster is hardly going to touch me. And you know the best part? We can just do it again. I don't know if I even need to use... I'm not sure I'll even need to use Essence Orb for this. Yeah, I don't think I have to. So we've imbued again, and I'm going to use Basket Breath. And now he's choked to 15% for 5 turns. And for the people who say that this is an inefficient and unsustainable strategy, that was off 1 full SP bar and 1 turn of regeneration. So I get now 5 turns to do whatever I want when I'm taking 15% damage, and the boss can't do anything to me. So it's a very strong strategy. You don't have to use Basket Breath, but it works against things with a really low damage cap. If you do, just a very powerful combo that I wanted to help showcase. This is not boosting it to the max either. If you want to use Hyper Crit, if you want to use Elevuln stacking, I'm going to have some showcases of that later, but on Combat Practice Trainer, just so I don't have to reset as often. And it's easier to set up in one go. But yeah, so this is boss ready and boss efficient. It's just a crazy strong use case for this this build, for this combo. Mason form's really, really good. Alright, so here we go. I'm no nuking expert, but as you can see, I've done a bit of shenaniganery with the 300% Elevuln, big burn to eat, and some random buffs that I kind of actually messed up, but it'll be fine. Should be a pretty massive nuke either way. Oh, I didn't see that pop up. Hold on. I'm gonna have to pause the clip and look at what the choke said. Okay, so I just put the screenshot up. 8 turns of doing 0.098 damage. So that's 8 turns of dealing 10% damage to me, the player, after that choke. So is that choke with 300% Elevuln and stacked up Hyper Crit practical and easy to do on bosses? No, definitely not. But Dizzle had a great video, Rip Dizzle's YouTube by the way, showing that with just a little bit of hypercrit setup, maybe like 1 or 2 turns of setup, you can get a 5-turn 10% choke, even at higher than that. So it's totally doable to get this choke to absolutely lunacy levels. And yeah, so it works against bosses with high boss boost. You can have reliable inflictions with celerity and or more potence. It works against bosses with low damage caps because you can use multi-hit effects like Torontosaurus or even like this weapons click skill. You can imbue this and it's 6 hits. And it scales off element resist, so it doesn't matter if the boss is really weak to an element or not. The only thing that matters is that it's not a negative resistance element. And finally, if you do want to take it to the max, you can get those crazy multi-round near 0 damage chokes off, and it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun to play with. So I would highly recommend picking up one of these Mason forms. I would recommend not getting light or dark because a lot of shadow monsters are immune to both of those, but if you get another element, only monsters of that element will be immune to it most of the time. If you're interested in covering every element with Mason form instead, I recommend getting 2 opposite elements, because there are almost no monsters that are of negative resistance to 2 opposite elements. Like if you get wind and earth, surely there's no earth monsters with negative wind resistance, right? Or there's like 3 in the whole game. So that's how I recommend you cover every element, unless you really just want all the coverage possible and switch them in and out of your builds. In which case, get all 8 if you're a whale, but I really think you can just stick with 1 and be pretty much set. So yeah, that's my review of Mason form and the Mason armor set. The other stuff, the Krieger claws and the pets, are not too notable. The pets are simply Elevone pets, of which there's a lot of free-to-play options, and the weapons are 20 proc weapons with a sleep special. So yeah, pretty ass. But the armor, really OP. Sorry for that mic pop there. Armor is really OP. You can use it against bosses. It is energy efficient, SP efficient to use. For the results it gets, giving you 5 turns of freedom. It's very SP efficient. Yeah, I'd highly recommend picking one of these up, playing around with it, building your choke setup, and having it as a option in your back pocket. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have different opinions or critiques to make. And I'll see you all later. Bye-bye. Have a good one.